Have you looked at a solver ever?
Yeah, I've looked and I've seen some of the solvers. There's actually one friend who I don't that I talk to about that kind of stuff. I'm
Mm-hmm.
never going to be like Mr. Solver. Luckily, my brain, again being the math-based brain, I think that I naturally do a lot of things that solvers say to do, just because I'm very good at figuring out the numbers and the percentages. And that's really what the solver is doing. Figuring out the exact numbers, and that comes very natural to me. So not necessarily really a solver guy, but I've definitely looked at all that kind of stuff. And I really think that like when you were talking about players to play against, players, this relates to that a little bit. I feel like if someone is, and this might be wrong, you might tell me you can't beat a solver or whatever, but I feel like the solver isn't adjusting enough to the other players at the table. And that's a huge thing when you're playing live. Like if I have two tight players in my big blind on the button, or I have two maniacs in the small blind and big blind on the button, that's two totally different ranges that I'm going to be raising with in that situation.
That's a very good point. Of course, the solver is not the solver is assuming that your opponent is playing GTO also.
Right.
So when you get two ranges going against each other, so let's say you open under the gun and the big blind defends, the solver is assuming big blind is defending optimally,
which that's not the case, like 95% of the time.
Not the case. Or if you're opening hijack and the button is defending, the solver is right away inputting your hijack range, and he's inputting the big button defend range, which is not the case in real time. And that's why exploitative is going to win every day in those live. And that match, the crossbook between Becker and what's his name?
Landon Tice.
Tice, yeah, they're the epitome of somebody. I mean, Becker is saying that he's not studied, but I think Becker watches a lot of players, crushers. They are studying a lot, so I think in a way he's
there's different ways of studying. You can
yes.
you don't have to study have the actual solver to learn those strategies. Like you say, if you know there's 4 or 5 guys and they're looking at the solvers and you're watching them play and you're watching their every move, then in essence you're learning the same thing they're learning in a different way.
Exactly. If you have a tough spot, would you go to a solver and plug it in at the end of the night, or you're not doing anything? You are
a little bit.
Oh, you are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as much as I should, but I've done that.
Okay.
But I'm not doing it like after every tournament or on break after whatever all the time.
Right.
Really, only for Hold'em I've done that. There is some stuff for some of the mixed games, like Omaha 8 or Better has some good solvers, or but
there are
you're definitely I'm never gonna be the guy who gets in trouble for opening my phone at the table and going to the solver for sure.
GTO wizard on your phone. Yeah, I can't see you doing that.
Not gonna happen. Yeah.
What do you rate yourself as a player? Are you a tag aggressive, a tight aggressive, loose aggressive, OMC? This is obviously a joke. You're not an OMC, but how do you rate yourself?
I think one of my better things is I adjust at different points of the tournament depending on who I'm playing with. I think just somewhere in between a tag and a lag, I would say, because okay. I have a pretty good feel of when to be tight and when to be loose, if that makes sense. So I kind of mix those two together a little bit. The more I'm playing with a group of people that don't know me, I'll typically loosen up because I can get away with some things, especially I'm 55. I can pull off kind of the old guy style without, but still have young guy moves. That's something I'm pretty good at. Now, if I'm playing a World Series event with all these people that know me, then I'm not going to do quite as much of that kind of stuff because most of them know that I'm capable of doing these kind of things. So then I'll trend back to the tag a little bit more.
So you can adjust in real time. You can go between tight aggressive and loose aggressive. The way I perceive you.
But backing up to one of the questions you asked earlier, who are your hardest players to play against? I named a few names, but I really meant to go to a sidebar of that and say, it's not so much the names of the hardest players. To me, the hardest players are the ones that are doing just what we said. They're adjusting, they're changing their style of play. You see him do one thing, and then you say, okay, well, he does this, and then basically the same situation 10 minutes later, he does something different. To me, that's what's hard to play against. If you're doing a lot of those, even the solver things, and you're always doing that, or you're the OMC, like you said, obviously that's easy to play against. If you're the super crazy lunatic, yeah, you're going to have variance playing against him, but it's easy to play against him because hey, if I have top pair, I'm never folding this guy. It's just you can just play like that. So to me, the people that really mix up their games and basically have the ability to be tagged 1 minute and then just be crazy the next minute, that's the people that are hard to play against.
Agree. They don't fit in a box. You can't put them in a box. They just they're capable of everything and anything.
So when you ask me which one I am, I'm giving you the idea between tag and live, but I like to try to be, hard to play against, and I have the ability to do different things, and I think that's definitely a strength of mine.
If you're interested, the way I perceive you at the table, I perceive you that you're capable of doing crazy things. I don't think you're tight, and I think you can be both, like you said, and that's how I perceive you. Just because you're talkative at showdowns, you're capable of everything and anything. So yeah, you're not tight. You're not one category. Do you show up on time for tournaments, or level 3, level 4? You're there at the start at level 1. What do you prefer and why?
Again, and like some of these other questions, I guess I'm gonna say with it depends, and then give you a couple scenarios. During the World Series of Poker, when I'm doing the 50-day grind, if there's a chance to come to the tournament, maybe 2-4 hours later, where I can get some extra rest, maybe cut down on my hours a little bit without losing too much value, I'll definitely do that. I'm not a big fan of being there, for the first hand, unless it's for like bigger events that have a lot of satellite winners. And then I think it's very important to get there. Say the Hollywood tournaments, when they run the 3,500s and the 5Ks down there, they run multiple satellites with 20 guaranteed seats, 50 guaranteed seats. So there's literally 100, 200 players out of the maybe 800 in your flight that are satellite winners. So I think it's very important to get there at the beginning in those specific tournaments and play with those people. Mm-hmm. Typically, though, I don't mind getting there late at all. My biggest score this summer at the World Series of Poker, I actually entered the 10K 6 max on day 2. So yeah, I really think you could definitely make cases for both things. But for me, especially getting older, one of the things when I'm playing at a tournament series and I'm playing every day, I just can't do 12 or 14 hours, 10 or 20 days in a row. I mean, I'm just too old. And like you're talking about with all the, I'm not a good eater. I'm not in the best of shape. Like all these different things kind of work against me a little bit in playing those lots and lots of hours. So that's something that I'm self-aware of. And one of the ways that I fight it is trying to be at the table not as many hours, or making sure that I'm there for the important hours. At midnight, I'm not getting tired because I was, up at 9 a.m. and, getting there for the first hand of the tournament. So I slept a couple hours later. I got there a little bit later, and now maybe I'm fresher at midnight than the average guy who's still playing at midnight. Makes sense. Well, one other answer to that is I'm sure you know who Scott Baumstein is. He's a Miami, mainly no limit player, but plays a little bit of mix as well. He never enters a tournament except for max late reg. Okay, so I'm not saying that's necessarily the right thing to do, but he's a really smart guy and a really good player. So if he's doing it, it can't be like too far out of line is how I look at things like that. Like what I was saying to you earlier, I watch other people and people that I respect, I see what they do. So I see someone like him doing that. It might not be plus EV or whatever. It's not adding to your EV. It's taking away from your EV a little bit, but I think he looks at it like it's adding to his hourly rate. He's playing for less hours. Maybe his ROI is going down a tiny bit, so he's not making quite as much money. But instead of playing poker 60 hours a week, he's playing it 30 hours a week, and then theoretically then making more money per hour. So a lot of different ways to think of it, but I don't think there's any right answer to early, middle, or late. To just give you a general. That's a good point. Another guy that comes to mind that does the same thing, shows up late, like max late reg, is Aaron T. He still gets there before the end of the reg sometimes, right? Like Scott will be walking around with 3 minutes of play left before the last registration break, and he won't enter. He waits until that break, so he never has to do a second bullet. Whatever. That's just how he does it, which I think is amazing. I've always been like level 3, level 4, but I'm trying to show up earlier now and seeing how it works. Depends on the event too. If it's a re-entry, you can blast around a little bit. Getting there later, you can get a stack easier. Another factor is if the turbos we play in Tampa, you should show up on time, like the 20-minute levels. Sure. You got to show up on time because the blind levels go up so quick when you show up and the blinds are like 1,000 and you start with 30K, you have 30 bigs, couple mistakes or things doesn't go your way, you're out. You're right. They have the super turbos with WSOP too. They did a 10K one last year and a 1,500, and those are very important now to show up for the first hand. They also do a few bounty tournaments. That's a whole other thing. If you're in a bounty tournament, you definitely should be there at the beginning because you're costing yourself chances of winning bounties or getting more chips that will allow you to get more bounties as you go on. And depending on the exact tournament, maybe 20, 30, 40, 50% of the money is going to the bounty pool, especially in these new mystery bounties where it's $1 million bounty. Like, it's very important to get there for the first hand of that.
The bounties start on day one, or does it start on day two?
It starts on day two, but you're in the mystery bounties, you're still accumulating chips the whole time that give you a chance of getting more bounties later. So it's more important to try to build a big stack. And if you bust doing that, it's more fine, because how you're really going to win a lot of money in that tournament is having a big stack and, getting 10 or 15 bounties and then winning, one of the big bounties.
That's my last question. And then we're going to go to the chat questions. There's a bunch of them. What do you think should change in poker in Tampa? Like when you play the events here, Hard Rock and the local rooms, what do you think they should do different as far as
that's probably a tough one for me to answer again, because I'm not playing near as many local tournaments as you are. I'm not seeing the day-to-day. I went and played at Derby Lane the other day in the 450 they had, and before that I probably hadn't been in there in a year. Sure. Silks I haven't been to in a couple of years, but I really do think, just from following on social media, that a lot of the rooms are doing a really good job this last year or two of making some bigger tournaments. That tournament at Derby Lane had 213 people for a $450 tournament. To me, that was amazing for a non-Hard Rock event. It was amazing. And JD over at TGT, throw a little shout out to him. I think he's been doing a great job with some of the newer tournaments he's had this last year. He ran a little mixed game series. He did a mystery bounty, and he's been very good on social media with promoting a lot of the stuff with the signs and all that. I just think that's very cool, because it just makes the experience better for the amateur player, which is some of the stuff like I've been talking with you and Clyde about you guys being maybe a little bit more friendly at the table or willing to talk to the people. That the people enjoy that. They want to talk to the stars, and you guys are the stars of Tampa poker. I mean, however you want to put it. I know I don't think you think of yourself as a star, but really, people enjoy talking to you. They want to meet you. They want to play with you.
No,
they
right.
want to be seen on social media, like the things that JD did there with the signs and the pictures and all that. They love seeing themselves and that kind of stuff, and it makes them want to come back and just makes their experience better. So it might only be a small, tiny little bit, but I think all of that just keeps the game going and builds the game, which is what we all want.
That was a nice touch by JD, by the way, those signs and stuff, and everybody, you can see them engaged, and they loved it. Yeah. And everything is on social media now. It's so easy to promote poker. It's free. All you have to do is just blast it on social media all the time.
I think we had a conversation maybe a year or two ago at the table where, all these, the bigger places in Vegas are promoting and showing pictures of people that win tournaments, just regular tournaments. And they're like, Hard Rock could do this. It's very easy. And now Hard Rock has, they've got the whole, any guy can win or anyone can win thing. And they show the picture of the guy who won the 150 every night. They put him on there. I think that's great. People love that.
Well, who made him start that?
I said, you and I had the conversation. So I was saying, I know you probably got to start that.
Made the post online. I got some resistance from some people saying, oh, the daily tournaments, they shouldn't get any those players shouldn't get any recognition. I said, not? Look what happened to Becker. He got famous from crushing dailies. Why not do that in Tampa? Good. Those are your customers. You take a picture of somebody like a complete unknown, and you take his picture and post it on Twitter, you gain that customer for life. Yeah, so exactly. It's good for the community. It's good for poker, of course. So now they even if you win an $80 tournament, they're posting it on Twitter.
I think it's great. People love it.
Let's go to the chat questions. Joshua Nicholson. You know Josh?
I know by name, but I don't know him well.
Beard. He's been grinding here for a while.
Yeah, I know who it is, but like
he said, what would the industry do to help mixed games grow in popularity with the younger players?
Yeah, I think the industry is doing a decent job of that. I mean, depending on who you ask, they consider PLO to be a mixed game, and then other people, the real mixed game lovers, will say it's not. To me, anything that's not no limit hold'em is a mixed game. And PLO is really growing, and obviously I'm not saying it's taking over, but amongst like the higher cash game players, it's kind of is taking over. The World Series obviously is the one place that has lots of mixed game events. Poker Go Studios started this once or twice a year now that we're having a mixed game series that I'm actually going out to next week. Like I mentioned, JD over at TGT ran a little 4 or 5 day mixed game series, maybe a year back that went pretty well. I'm not really sure like what you can really do to increase the love. To me, it's just more fun, more enjoyable to play. And when you do get people to play, they really tend to like it. And I think it's a slow process. It's not anything that's ever going to happen overnight. But I think over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, there definitely is more mixed game tournaments. Even in the Hollywood series, they've been putting more mixed games, in there. They're realizing that you can have a no limit hold'em tournament every day at 11 a.m. and then run a mixed game at 3 p.m. You've got the dealers there, you've got the tables, you've got the people. Why not? It can't hurt just to run another tournament that day. And people play those. The ones down in Hollywood have been getting say 100 people a day, which is a decent little tournament.
Well said. I got a question here, but I forgot who wrote it. I think. This is Jimmy Farnsworth. He said, "Has AJ ever had a collapse in a big tournament like the Eagles?"
That could only be a Jimmy Farnsworth. That's coming from a sour Cowboys fan. Because the Cowboys haven't won anything in about 30 years. So
shots fired.
But I think we've all had collapses in tournaments, right? We all. How many times will we all? Your friend comes up to you and says, "Wow, you got a lot of chips. You're doing great," with maybe 50 people left, and then all of a sudden, with 25 people left, he texts you how you doing, and you've been home for 2 hours. That's just how tournament poker goes. And
it's
if you haven't had those experiences where you've blown a bunch of chips and you're not playing correctly, you're playing too tight when you get chips.
Well said. Poker news, Jamie Beard. Beard, right?
Of course. Who doesn't know Beard?
Poker news. He's famous. He's famous in his own. He said, "Has AJ ever been able to finish unlike the Cowboys?" Wow.
Well, that was just a jab right back at Jimmy.
Below the belt.
So just one quick thing off of that. Maybe about 10 years ago, I said the two things I wanted out of life. I wanted to see an Eagles Super Bowl victory, and I wanted to win a WSOP bracelet. And within a year of each other, I did both those things. So anything else I do or accomplish, I said that back then, so I really can't complain. Whatever happens from here. So
bang bang. Michael Lucky has a lot of good questions. By the way, shout out to Michael. I got a coaching tomorrow. I'm doing some coaching at his house, so I need to post about it on social media. What do you like about stud and draw games, and why do you think the public doesn't love them as much as flop games? What do you like about stud and draw games? Or these are no flop games?
Yeah, they're no flop games. 7-card stud, it's very important to remember the up cards of the other players. So that creates kind of an extra challenge. You have a good memory, and if you're really paying attention. The draw games are just more fun. If you get 5 cards and you get 3 draws. So if you don't like your cards, you can throw any amount away, and you can get however many new ones that you throw away. So if you throw away 3, you get 3 new ones. Then the next street after betting, you can throw away two of your cards you don't like and get 2 new ones. It's more interactive. It's more fun. I think the players playing are having more fun. So it's just, to me, more enjoyable poker. I got bored all these years of playing no limit hold'em, and I still struggle, with the boredom while playing no limit hold'em. And these other games are just kind of excite me, or kind of revived my poker career and made me enjoy it a little bit more again. So, and that's probably the best way I can answer that.
He said, "Why do you think the public doesn't love them as much as flop games?"
Yeah, I think in general, I don't know if there's anything specific about the games. I think once they get to play them, they do like them, but people just don't like change. There was the whole moneymaker boom. No limit hold'em started. That's what's on TV. That's what's the main event of the World Series of Poker. That's what's played at 90% of the tournaments at the Hard Rock that you play in, on a weekly basis. That's just what's played. So that's what people do, and for some of the grinders, I talked with Clyde a little bit about this, and he said he would really love to get into mixed games, but he finds it hard to find the time with the hours he's playing, like you're talking about, and also the hours he's putting in studying to try to be the best no limit hold'em player he can be. There's just not time to learn other things.
Same here.
I think as you get a little bit, once he does a lot more of that stuff in the limit hold'em and it feels like he's learned, he'll have more time to do it. But he's really, as good as he is, he's still in the learning curve. You've played a lot more years than him, so you've studied a lot of this stuff more than him. He's done amazing so far in 2 years, but he's still studying a lot of some of the stuff that that we've been playing for 20 years that we've learned.
Another factor is people don't want to play anything that they suck at. So when you're good at hold'em and you jump in a, let's say
you're not going to be good.
7-card stud, you're going to be a fish, and it's not a good feeling. So it's challenging. That's why people don't like it.
See, I like that because I love a challenge. That's part of the reason I did it too, because it's a new thing. I'm very competitive. I love to learn new things, and give myself a challenge to get better at something. And, you know, obviously, like you said, when you first start playing something, you're going to lose some money. So when you're really grinding for a living and every dollar matters, you really can't go, you know, dust off 1,000 or 2 in whatever 7-card stud game or triple draw game that you're going to play, you know. Luckily, I got to the point where I could start doing that a little bit. And I'm not saying the money's not important, but the money's not like an end all like it used to be for me. So I can do things now that aren't, you know, where my first focus isn't the money.
Another question: what's your main source of income? I'm guessing it's not poker. And how do you manage bankroll management? Any advice on bankroll management for somebody coming up?
I mean, it's mostly poker. It's been mostly poker for years. Bankroll management is definitely a hard thing. I feel like the most important part of that is just not being a degen in other ways. You know, you obviously want to play within your bankroll, but when you need to just keep your poker bankroll separate from the things you do in life, whether that's, you know, eating or whether that's other degen things you do. You have to keep it separated. You can't just be dipping into your poker bankroll all the time thinking that it's just easy to get it back, because it's really not. So
that's a good point. You keep separate bankrolls for, you know, everyday expenses.
I used to more, and I've gotten to the point now where I think I'm experienced enough. I just don't have to do that as much anymore. And, you know, I'm not on that weekly grinding my bills like I used to be either. So it's not as important now. I've gotten to the point where I can, you know, do some things that I enjoy and not worry about the money so much, which I'm super grateful for. And I mention that a lot because, you know, that's something I'm proud of, and I've gotten to that point. And it allows me just to, you know, enjoy poker and enjoy some other things in my life more than I did, say, 10 or 20 years ago.
Interesting. Lucky, another question from Michael. Where does the main event rank to you amongst other major bracelet titles? 50K PPC. Is 50K PPC your favorite 10K championship? PPC means what? Poker Player Championship? Poker
Players Championship. It's a 50K where it's like an 8 or 9 game mix. They change it every year. I think it's a 9 game mix now. Mm-hmm. So obviously the main event, you know, the 10K main event of the World Series of Poker, that's the tournament that has the biggest prize. You're going to get the most notoriety from winning it. I've said before, it's not my favorite tournament because, you know, again, getting older, it's such a grind. It's such a long grind. And it's probably not my specialty. I would say it'd be a great one to win. The money's great, but I think he used the word prestigious there in his question. To me, the most prestigious tournament to win is the 50K Poker Players Championship, because it shows that it shows that you have a high skill level in all the different games, and 9 different games. It's very, just like we talked about before, it's hard to learn the different games, and you're not going to be good when you start. Well, you now have played 9 games that you weren't very good at the start, and you've taken the time to learn them and get good at those. To win a tournament like that. So that's definitely the number one for me. If I could win any tournament, even though it's not near as much money as the main event, it's definitely more prestigious. Of the 10Ks, the 10K Dealer's Choice, I've had very good success in the WSOP Dealer's Choices. Those are a 20 game mix where as you go around the table, you play 6 hands of each game, and each player will decide the next 6 hands and what game you want to play.
20 games? That's sick.
Yeah, 20 games are in the Dealer's Choice. And again, to me, that's prestigious, or that's something I'm proud of when I do well in that, because it shows that I can play 20 games at least on a average to above average level. Or you obviously can't do well in a 20 when there's 20 games. If you're bad at 5 of the games, the other people at the table are going to be picking those games and kind of taking advantage of you in those games. So those are my favorite.
Another question is, what's your favorite early handicapping story? What's a handicap?
He's talking about sports handicapping. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I really have one of those. Plus, we're talking to a poker audience here, so I don't even want to bore him with that stuff. But I've definitely had some good sports betting stories and bad sports betting stories over the year, like I think anybody who does it.
Oh, so this is sports. Favorite places to play in Vegas after Poker Go Studio? That's lucky too.
Oh, so he's obviously just saying right off the bat the Poker Go Studio is my favorite, because it really is amazing to play there. Just how they have it set up, how they run the tournaments, the food they bring you at the table, just everything is just 100% top notch. I love playing there. So again, I'm excited about going there next week for their series. Other than that, the Win is super nice, and the Win, again, pretty much like Poker Go Studio, they do everything right. They have, the floor people and the dealers are all top notch. It's the new cash poker room they have. Is like I say new, but it's 5, 6, 7 years old. It's beautiful. The other places are all about the same, like the Ari and the Bellagio are all just good places. Good places to play. The Venetian's probably my least favorite of the quote popular places. I just the times that I've gone there, I just have had bad experiences, or things go wrong, or they took a guarantee off a tournament a year or two ago. You know, a lot of different reasons. I'm just not really a fan of Venetian, so that would be like the bottom of my bottom barrel of the main places I guess in Vegas to play.
The Wynn was definitely my favorite. It's insane how they take care of every detail.
And times that by 2, and then you get the Poker Go Studio.
Damn. Last question by Eric Williams. What are your thoughts on chopping?
I mean, that's something that people know. You know, I'm not a big chopper. I'll just give you a few reasons. One, especially in like the smaller local tournaments, like a smaller series, not to chop, because there's going to be times, especially if you're trying to play like, you know, bigger poker, you know, the rest of your career, you're going to be in situations where you're not allowed to chop, or the other guy won't chop. So to me, playing 3-handed, 4-handed, 5-handed, just getting the experience of doing that as often as you can really helps you when you start playing in bigger events where they won't let you chop. The other thing is, again, I'm so competitive. Like, I want to win. You know, I'm entering the tournament to win. I'm not entering the tournament to, you know, 6-way chop it and, you know, I have more chips and, oh, I've got the trophy, even though we were still playing 6-handed. I didn't win anything, you know? When you play other sports, I grew up playing, you know, lots of different sports. You know, when it's the fourth quarter of the football game and it's tied with 7 minutes left, they don't say, oh, let's just call it a day and, you know, call it a tie. That's the fun part, you know, and the feeling of winning, even though it's very hard to get, that's the most fun part you can have when you actually win.
It is hard to get, for sure.
You know, I understand the money, you know, depending on what the tournament is and depending on what your poker bankroll is. Obviously, I'm not necessarily criticizing other people that chop in those situations. I'm just saying, if you have the opportunity to not chop and it makes sense money-wise, then I feel like that's, you know, to go for it and play it out. Then you'll learn a lot from it.
I think we covered everything. You want to add anything before we close? And guess
you had asked at the beginning, and we never really went into. You know, I had a really good 2023, and I think people would like to hear a little bit about the last tournament I played in was the six max 10K, and I ended up coming third, and I played with a lot of really good people in that tournament. I think Clyde asked about that in the chat today, and I was saying it was a good question.
Oh, you know what? I missed that question. Yeah. Clyde did ask about that.
Yeah. So I want to answer that, because I have a couple good story hands now. We can kind of close with that. But, you know, the final table had Helmuth, Stephen Chidwick, Michael Rosetto, Justin Liberto. I mean, Eric Baldwin, who everyone knows as Baldy from the online days. I mean, a lot of really good players that I played with. You know, it was a great experience. A couple hands from that I just think are fun hands, because we didn't really talk about specific hands at all. These two.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's get into the poker. I like it.
Yeah. So I ended on day 2. I doubled up right away on just like a standard flip. In still level 1 of day 2, I got in a hand with Victoria Lifshitz. Mm-hmm. She's a high stakes, you know, semi well-known grinder in the high stakes world. I had 100K. Big blind was 2,500. I raised under the gun with King Queen to 5,500. And it came around to her in the small blind, and it was Stephen Chidwick's big blind. And she immediately looked over at Steve and kind of gave him the, you know, hands up, like, let me see your chips thing. She looked at his chips. He only had about 30K, which is about 12 big blinds. And she immediately took a big stack of 5Ks and just put them over the line, you know, to basically go all in. And I wasn't sure right when she did it. I thought she might not have seen me in the hand just because of, you know, how she did that. So Chidwick took about 15 seconds and he folded. And then when he folded, she flicked her hand like towards the muck for the dealer. And the dealer said, like, you know, hey, no, like, you know, pointed at me like he's in the hand. And, you know, and she looked like she'd seen a ghost. You know, so obviously at this point, I know she didn't see that I was in the hand. Okay, so she was just jamming, maybe not any 2 cards, but any 2 semi-reasonable cards into his big blind of 12 big blinds, which is pretty much a standard play for a decent player. So now I have to decide, you know, I've got 40 big blinds. I have to decide whether I want to play King Queen. And to me, you know, I talk to a lot of people about it, and the better players all thought I definitely should be calling there. And to me, the weaker players all think I should fold there because they have this attitude of you can find a better spot. You don't need to gamble for 40 big blinds, you know, yada, yada.
How many people are left at this point?
It was the first level of day 2, so maybe like half the field or something like that.
Oh, first level. I thought you were talking final table. First level
of day 2.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, we're nowhere. You start with 60K. I had like 100K at this hand. You know, so I doubled up-ish before this hand. So I'm probably average stack or something like that with 40 big blinds at the beginning of a day two. To me, that's a time where, you know, especially when I'm playing in a field where if I have an edge, it's a very small one. And you can certainly make a case for that I'm negative EV in that tournament. I mean, it's every crusher in the world playing a 10K 6-max. You know, I'm certainly not saying I'm a big favorite in the field like that. I'm playing because I love the World Series and my fantasy poker that we talked about and all these other things. So if I get a chance to gamble, I'm going to gamble. I probably took maybe 10 or 15 seconds and called. And turns out, you know, she had the perfect hand. She had Queen Jack, which is obviously exactly what I wanted to have with King Queen. And I won the hand. And that kind of, you know, now I have 200K when the average is 100. And some of the things we talked about before, even though I'm not a favorite in that field, I can kind of use my stack a little bit and bully around a little bit and, you know, play some poker, as I like to call it. So that was one hand. Another one of the really interesting hands, and this is a really crazy hand. This was about beginning of day 3, so maybe like 25 people left. I had Phil Helmuth was a big blind on this hand, and Steve Zalatow was a small blind, who's, for people who don't know, he's just like an old school grinder who's generally a tight player, who's had a, you know, good bit of success in the poker world playing the tag style, you know, as you call it, or maybe even a bit of the OMC in him too, you know, at this point. But I had like over 1 million chips. Big blind was 30K on this hand. I had about 1.5 million or something like that. Helmuth had the same, and Steve had about half. So I raised 8-6 of hearts in the cutoff to 60K, and they both called. So now we have a 200K pot. I've got, you know, not a great hand, but I'm raising those kind of hands again, like we talked about earlier, because they're both basically tight hold'em players. I'm going to get the blinds a lot in that situation, you know.
It's a standard, 6-8 a heart, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, if I have 2 crazy guys in the big blind who are 3-betting me every time, I'm not going to open that in that spot. But when I have those 2, they're only 3-betting me with the real 3-betting hands, and they're folding a lot. So anyway, they both call. The flop comes deuce 4-7 rainbow. Deuce 4-7 rainbow flop with 1 heart. They check to me. I bet 50K into like a 200K pot, which I think is fairly standard, like smallish bet. I think checking will be fine too. But again, I'm playing against 2 fairly tight players whose ranges there are typically going to be, you know, bigger cards with the deuce 4-7 misses, and I think they're going to fold quite a bit there, which turns out, like the story, they didn't. But so Mr. Tight Steve min check raises it to 100K in the small blind, which I know is like a pretty good hand if he's min check raising it. So I immediately think there's a decent chance he has a set, or he like slow played aces or kings or something like that. And now Helmuth cold calls the 100K as well.
Oof.
So his hand's really confusing because even though he's a big blind, like he shouldn't have a lot of the cards on the board in his range, you know. But anyway,
he has a bunch of straight draws.
Right. I mean, he could have like 5-6 suited or something like that. You know, he could have a set and be slow playing it, but there's really not like a lot of hands, like maybe ace-7 suited or something weird that he just.
I don't think he'll continue with top pair there.
Yeah, I don't think so really either. But so anyway, it doesn't really matter because my hand is, you know, I'm not liking obviously my hand at this point, you know, but I have to call 50K more.
And fold for a min click, yeah.
Now the pot's 500K and it's 50K to me, and everyone's got stacks, right? So I obviously call the 50K. The turn was the most beautiful card ever, the 5 of spades. So obviously makes me the nuts. And Zalatow bet out, I think 100K. Helmuth called
how much now? 100K, 3 ways, 300K.
Yeah, there's 500K in the pot. I mean,
500K, okay.
About 500K in the pot. He leads out for 100K. Helmuth calls 100K. Now, Steve had maybe like 500 or 600K left. And to me, the pot was just big enough. And I really thought at this point they both had like big hands. I'm not sure like what they had, but whatever they had to be pretty damn good for them to be, you know, putting in this, you know, the chips they put in. So I made a 500K. Zalatow instantly went all in for like, you know, about that. And now Helmuth just went in the tank for like 2 or 3 minutes, throwing his arms up in the air, doing all the Helmuth stuff. Like, how does this happen to me? Like, what is going on? This is incredible. You know, yada, yada, yada. Eventually folds face up the 4-7 of spades. So, which was top 2 pair on the flop. And now he turned a spade draw. Okay. So obviously, like, I love Phil, like, but he just, you know, obviously he pretty much butchered the hand, you know. And Zalatow had a set of deuces. So it was a crazy hand. Phil and I are pretty friendly. He still talks about to me whenever I see him. He's like, he calls me the 6-8 guy now. Like he says, I can't believe I folded that hand. Like, you know, I wasn't going for the win. And obviously, as I'm telling the story, you can realize we were all in. The river was, Phil folded and the river was a spade. So he would have made his runner flush with the 4-7 and had all the chips. And, you know, now every time I see him, I hear about that hand, and et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, he's definitely behind. One of you has a set for sure, and most likely Zalatow has a set there in that spot.
But on the flop, when he flop, like, what are you trying to flop with 4-7 of spades? It's deuce 4-7. You have to do something then, right? I mean,
yeah, but I mean, if Zalatow wasn't in the hand, he can slow play. But I think Zalatow's range is very strong there. When you bet flop and he min clicks it, and according to his image, you're saying he's very. I mean, he could have all the overpairs. He could have 8s, 9s, 10s that Helmuth is beating. So yeah, I mean, and if he has 9s or 10s, he has so few equity in the pot. So even if Helmuth slow plays, he's still gonna win the hand regardless. But if he has sets, he's behind. So I think that's his thought process. But you're in the hand too. I mean, and the 5 puts, like, all the straights get there. There are 2 straights, right?
But on the flop, when it goes 50K and Zalatow makes it 100K, and it's 2-4-7, and you have top 2 pair, don't you think, like, he's supposed to re-raise there? I mean, he's got to re-raise there at least. Top 2
pair is a candidate for a raise, sure. Not every time, but yeah. I mean, of course, sets 2 pairs are raising there.
I mean, to me, and again, I'm certainly not a no limit hold'em expert these days, but if that was a heads up pot, I could understand him. In essence, he's slow playing his hand by calling. He's not really. I don't think he's that afraid. He's slow playing his hand. If it's heads up, I'm fine with that. But when 2 people have put in money on the flop and one's a raise, I think that's the time you just have to go with your hand.
I mean, I can plug it in GTO Wizard right now. It's gonna go for a raise probably.
And then it's just me. And again, I think the difference is Phil thinks of himself as a winning player in that tournament, and whether he might or might not be at this point of his career is another discussion for another day. I'm admitting that I think I'm at best a equal EV player in that tournament. I'm willing to gamble. Mm-hmm. If I get 4-7 and it comes 4-7 deuce and I get a spade on the turn, I don't care how much money they put in there. Like, I'm not folding my hand. I mean, a 4 is good, a 7 is good, a spade should be good. Like, there's a bunch of money in there. That's just how you win a tournament. You don't win a tournament to me at that point by making, like, the amazing fold. It's just not my style.
You said the flop was 4-7 deuce.
Yeah.
Spades.
1 spade, and then the 5 that I hit the straight with was a spade on the turn. Oh, so now he folded on the turn. With both of us putting in a bunch of money, and no matter what we have, like, all his outs should be good. I mean, with 2 pair, and now he has a spade draw that obviously nobody should really have a spade draw in the hand, the way the hand played out. So he's got 15 outs, and the pot's massive. He's already got a ton of money in there. He's already called the bet on the turn before he folded. I don't know. It's just I guess it's a little bit of Phil being Phil, but which is the hand I thought he played pretty poorly.
Yeah. I mean, it's borderline. Anyway, we did hour 20 minutes and you covered all the questions. That's pretty impressive. Anything else you want to add? You want to say something about the cross book before? I mean, it's trending on Twitter now between Becker and Landon. Who do you think is favorite? What do you think about the bet overall? By the way, they had a podcast yesterday, the Poker with Friends podcast with Berkey. And while they're on the podcast, they're talking about the Becker Tice challenge. Somebody brought to the studio a card, and the card said, it was the Landon Tice with balloons, black balloons. And the card said something about RIP to your bankroll to Tice. It was good knowing you or something. And it says from Becker. So I don't know who did that prank. I mean, the timing, because it was streaming live, the podcast was streaming live, and they timed it perfectly when they started talking about the challenge. And somebody delivered it to the studio. Some people said it's Negreanu, and somebody.
I think it's fine. I'm guessing that would be Negreanu because he's been.
They texted him and he said no.
No. Oh, all right.
I'll send you the clip. By the way, it's towards the end of the clip. So anything you have to add about the whole Negreanu? I mean Becker Tice.
Yeah. I mean I'm just going to top my head. I didn't read it super specifically, but I think it has to be they both have to play at least 25 tournaments, I believe.
Correct.
Which obviously in any kind of tournament scenario, 25 tournaments isn't enough to prove the answer that they're trying to prove. So when everyone's saying Becker should be a big favorite, whatever, I mean I do think I would take his side of it. I just think in that kind of a challenge, you really can't be as big of a favorite as what some people are saying. It's 25 poker tournaments. I mean, the best players in the world go 1 for 25. Like sometimes it just happens, you know. And the crappy players can win 2 tournaments out of 25. You know, I mean, it's just
not a big enough sample. Yeah, so much.
It's not a big enough sample to get a. It's a fun thing. I think it's cool if they're doing it. I'll obviously root for Becker as a Tampa guy and, you know, friend of his or whatever. But, you know, I just don't think there's much of an edge either way. If someone wanted to bet me, I definitely would take Becker at even money, but I wouldn't lay more than like maybe say minus 130 or, you know, on my money, something like that.
Yeah, I think Negreanu did it for hype. It's good hype before the WSOP.
It's fun.
It's fun. You know, that's the main thing why he did it. It creates a little drama on Twitter and stuff, and gets everybody hyped up to the WSOP. What's your plan for WSOP this year? When are you going out there? Are you playing everything the normal schedule?
Yeah, normal schedule. I'm flying out a couple days before. I like to get out there and, you know, kind of get situated. And the fantasy draft that I was telling you about is the night before the first event. So we go and do that. It's in the Poker Go studio, and they stream that as well. So for anybody that likes that kind of stuff, you know, you can watch that. And it's kind of neat. Do that the first night.
Where can they watch it?
They can watch it on Negreanu will post a link to it. Just search it on Twitter or 25kfantasy.com is the site, and that they also have a Twitter handle that, you know, updates all that kind of information about it. So for anyone that's interested, that's kind of neat. It's like a good way to start off this year. They get to see all the, you know, my friends, the mixed game friends and stuff, and, you know, they don't see that much. And then there's that first tournament. The first day is the 5K champions event where all the main event champions get an entry into the event free. And any of the other players that knock one of them out get a 10K entry into the main event. So I think that's a really cool tournament to start off the series with, and it's a neat new tournament that they're running this year.
When does it start? I haven't looked at the schedule yet. When is the first tournament? Is it May 31st?
May 28th, I believe, off the top of my head.
28th.
Yeah, and that one and the casino employees event are the first 2 tournaments the first day, which they normally don't have anything too exciting the first day, but to me, a 5K champions event the bounty on a champion to get a 10K main event seat's a really cool perk.
The bounty is on like specific players, or
it's everybody? On any of the main event champions, and they all get free buy-in. So anyone that's won the main event at any point gets a free 5K buy-in into this event, and any of the other players that enter that knock one of those players out gets a free entry into the main event.
What's the bounty on the main event champs?
What do you mean? It's a 10K event, so main event seat. So it's a 10K, basically a 10K.
It's a main event seat. Wow, that's
a free main event seat. Yeah, so it's kind of
wow. Neat. So there's an incentive to knock one of those players out.
Yeah.
All right, AJ, it's been a lot of fun. We covered a lot of stuff. I
appreciate it. Just one little shout out to you. I think you know what you're doing for the Tampa community, doing this podcast. You know, you're starting teaching type things. You've been the ambassador in a couple different rooms. You know. Like I say, you're the Tampa poker legend, which I think is pretty cool. And, you know,
thank you
for the community. It's real nice.
Nice of you. Nice of you. Really nice having you on. And I guess I'll see you on the felt.
Yep.
Thanks, AJ.
I know I'll see you out the World Series this summer. I better see you out the whole time.
For sure. Thanks.
None of this I'm staying in Tampa crap.
No, I'll be out there. Thank you for coming on the pod. Appreciate it.
All right, man. You got it. See you.
All right. Bye-bye.